Hi, my name is Noor Saeed, and this is a final project in response to a UK study tour that I took with classmates and professors in June of this year to the UK, which included London and Edinburgh. But this project, this presentation will focus on Scotland, and I would like to begin with Scotland's small business environment. It's an analysis and a discussion with some suggestions at the end. And what I'd like to begin with is the kind of an overview of what's going on with the business environment, and then try to zero in on exactly what the issue is, which is the small business. So we'll work our way there by first discussing the delegation of power to the Bank of England. And what I mean by that is it's very interesting. First, we'll start off by saying that we had a chance to visit the Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS. We had a chance to visit their grounds, the school that they had there. And we know that they've been getting a lot of heat because their capital structure changed quite a bit because of a lot of mistakes that they made with AMRO. So the government now owns 80%, last I heard, of RBS, and they remain at only 20% private value. So it's pretty interesting to find out that the Bank of England is fairly autonomous when it comes to decisions, fiscal decisions, meaning interest rates and money printing, which can vastly change the currency of a country, the value of the currency, the exchange rates, how much they're holding in reserves. And it was pretty interesting. On a personal standpoint, it was a little confusing to see them go from the standpoint of wanting to own more of private companies and then turn around completely and give a lot of the public power, the parliamentary power, to a private institution like the Bank of England because it is not public. So pretty interesting turn of events there. From that point, we're going to move on to the injection of artificial money. Obviously, the economic crash affected the UK too. So Parliament did very similar to what the United States did, which is they kind of had this stimulus package. Of course, they didn't really call it a stimulus package. But it is, in fact, an artificial injection of money. That's what we call it. It's an artificial injection of money because it's not like these businesses made the money or that the commerce made the money or the economy made the money and then the money went into the economy because they generated it themselves. It's an artificial injection of money because it wasn't generated from the economy. So what's happening is the money's being funneled in there and it's creating a bubble, much to like we just had before that burst. And when we went to the Bank of England, I was questioning the associate there, and I was telling him, well, this is very interesting because, it's they're pumping money in. That you're very hopeful that in the coming future that there's going to be a return, which is the next point we're going to be talking about, return on investment. But the problem is with these businesses, you're giving all this money and you're trying to be strategic, and it's very difficult to be strategic about where the money goes. You're giving it to different businesses and different industries and sectors, and you're hoping that the money is going to be used wisely and that it's going to be returned eventually because the businesses will succeed and the industries will succeed and the economy will be stimulated. But the problem is that it becomes a crutch a lot of the time, and the return on investment is really not that great. We had a depression in the 1980s. We've had a bubble effect going on for a while through the 90s, and finally the bubble burst. And the reason is because we have had these artificial injections of money continuously, obviously not as large. And the problem is if the economy doesn't rise to meet that artificial injection of money, which is crazy because not only Does it have to rise on its own and try to like overcome the depression it's currently in? But it has to have an even steeper climb because it also has to make up the difference of the money it was given. So it has both of these factors running against it. So obviously, to try to meet this bubble effect is overwhelmingly difficult. So it's going to be very interesting to see because there's a lot of countries that did this stimulus package for their people. So it's going to be really interesting to see which countries are able to meet this bubble effect in the coming years. A lot of countries might get close, and there's still going to be a bubble pop. It won't be nearly as bad, but it will. Some countries, maybe they'll overcome it. Some countries might not be so lucky. But the crazy thing is we're all so connected that it's going to affect everybody. So we'll move on to the third point that I have here, which is there was no successful business environment strategy for return on investments. And that's the potential problem that we have. That is the problem that we have with the injection. Governments are trying to make up for that at this point. And what I mean by no successful business environment strategy for return on investment is that a lot of the businesses we have today are really unprepared for competition in this new global age. Since the 1980s until now, there has been huge, huge changes. Leaps and leaps and leaps and bounds every single year, not only on technology, but also on theory. Because all the time when technology is changing, it's completely shrinking our world. I know that Dr. Reed spoke about this in his global management class, and he spoke about how the world is constantly shrinking with technology, and that is absolutely true, and it's happening faster and faster at this point. And so because of that, theory is changing, strategy is changing, methodologies are changing, and companies are having a very, very hard time keeping up. But pop culture moves whether or not your company is ready for it. And so that's a big, big problem, and a lot of companies are unprepared for it. They're still living in a 1950s to 1980s mindset because that era right there is, we'll get into that, it's a big business era. But they're still living in that mindset with a lot of theories from that time, even though obviously we've discussed in business school different strategies and concepts and ideas. But those ideas, by and large, don't translate across the board to all businesses. We're talking about regular people who open up businesses and sometimes run multi-million-dollar companies. But by and large, we're talking about the majority, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, are run by just regular people. And their concepts of business are not these new age concepts that we understand today. And my concept of business today will be different in a year. So anyways, so it's a forever shrinking world and everything's rapidly changing. They're not prepared for it, and there has been no solid plan unilaterally across the board in government to make sure that there is a strategy to inject this money in, to prepare the businesses on a grassroots level to be able to take this money and to be able to have a plan strategically for the economy as a whole, because that's how you have to have it. You have to have an attack plan, an action plan for the economy. So the next point I want to get to is big business is an outdated concept. Now, I kind of touched on this a second ago, but big business is an outdated concept. Now, in the industrial age and during the Civil War, and after that, in the industrial age came after that, then mass production started. I'm kind of goofing a little bit here, but mass production began. We started having factories, people started mass producing. And then in the 1950s, pop culture started getting really interested in the idea of big business. It became really fashionable, very trendy. Big business was something that was kind of plastered all over. And in the 1980s, it was kind of the same thing. They even had movies called that. So